Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us. I'm really going to try tonight to give you some insights into better bird photography, or shall I say more action-orientated bird photography. And I'll do that at the hand of one of our very, very good destinations we visited recently. So let's get going. First of all, let me just tell you what I'm going to share with you tonight. I want to answer a question that I get very often in terms of bird photography. Say, what makes a good bird photograph? So I'm going to try and answer that question. Then, why is the Zambezi suited for this? I'm going to tell you about specific bird behavior that allows us to do this over and over and over again and really hone your skills. I'm going to show you some examples of what to expect. I'm going to share right in the end, before we get into the discussion, general discussion, and answer your questions. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on our mentorship programs, as well as specific trip destination information. So that'll come right in the end. Right, so what makes a bird photograph? According to me, few basics that must be in place, like your lighting. If you decide to go for specific lighting, if you want a side lighting or from the back or backlit specifically, or over your shoulder, make sure that's where you are positioned. Your image has got to be sharp. You have to choose the correct shutter speed. If you are going for a sharp image all over, then make sure it's high shutter speed. If you're going for something that is blurred or you just tracking it, make sure at least the head is focused and the rest is seriously out of focus. Don't just do a little bit of out of focus on the wings and say that it portrays motion. Do it properly. Get some really slow shutter speeds going. Then your depth of field, you want the whole subject in focus. So the new cameras and so on allow us to do that with our high ISO that we can shoot. That allows us for more depth of field, it allows for higher shutter speed. And then when you into your post-processing, every good photograph deserves to be processed. Make sure that the object that you are photographing has space to move into, like the one that you see there. It's moving from left to right, top to bottom. So there's a bit of space that it can move into down in the bottom right. And then, of course, action and interaction is very, very important because that allows for storytelling and makes it more interesting photograph. So why am I mentioning the Zambezi? I've done the Zambezi trip a few times, specifically to go and photograph the Carmine bee-eaters, but then also found a host of other birds on the Zambezi. Really makes for some spectacular photographs during the October, November breeding season. In terms of the key highlights of this, you have the breeding of the Carmine bee-eaters. There are thousands of these birds along the banks, nesting on the sandy riverbanks and also on the flat surfaces where the soil is soft enough, where we go and sit and you are able to photograph them. The dynamic on the river is really fantastic. You have so many different species. I think in the last trip, we did over 140 species of birds just on that one section of the Zambezi. We had pink-backed pelicans, herons, fish eagles as they hunt, kingfishers, and they all come when the river is nice and low. There's a lot of fish, especially the little squeaker fish, like a little barbel type of fish that everything predates on. So really a fantastic setting for that. Then the high action techniques that we want to practice in an environment like that allows through the repeatability. So you have so many of these Carmine bee-eaters, for instance, that are up and down, that are bathing, that are flying, that are fighting, and you can keep on shooting. So you have 2-3 hours in the morning and you will fill your cards. And you can go back to the lodge over lunch, have a look, see where you made a mistake, see where you want to do things differently, and you can repeat that the next morning because the action is going to be there again. But the birds diving into the river, returning with food onto specific perches. So it just makes a fantastic practice sessions. And then the modern camera technology that we've got with the mirrorless It allows specifically for high-speed action, including your bird tracking. Many of the cameras have this pre-capture mode where you can actually capture the bird as it takes off from these perches. And your autofocus systems on these cameras are just absolutely phenomenal. So as a birding destination, I'm just going to give you 2 or 3 slides just in terms of the Zambezi. That's the 4th largest river in Africa for those that are not from Africa. And it runs all the way to the Indian Ocean. It originates in Zambia, right at the top, flows through Angola, comes back into Zambia again, and then forms the border between Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe before it runs into Mozambique, where it flows into the Indian Ocean. So the seasons, October, November, we're probably looking at the lowest. And then it starts picking up from December onwards, and it probably reaches its peak in May with many meters of water that goes through those few months. So just a map orientation, you'll see where we are. It goes over the Livingston, Victoria Falls, through the Kaborabassa Dam, and then all the way into Mozambique and into the ocean. And October, November is the breeding season of many of the different bird species. So as I said, we're going to focus on this specific subject that's going to allow us to practice, but to be able to do that, we also need to understand the species better so that we can determine and predict what it is that we want to photograph, where we want to sit, and what specific activities of this bird do we want to photograph. So the southern carmine is the largest of the African bee-eater species. There are 28 of these bee-eater species in total. The distribution is all the way from Uganda down to Mozambique, and they nest close to water bodies, either on the ground or in the riverbanks. And these burrows of theirs can be up to 2 meters deep in these sandy banks. What do they eat? The adults forage aerially, and their diet consists of invertebrates, bees, dragonflies, anything that flies, basically. And it could also go down to small fish and some insects from the water. However, the chicks, they are exclusively insectivorous, and that's what they'll get fed. The feeding, once they've caught something, they'll go fly back to a perch. They'll sit on that perch, and as you've seen, they'll hammer that insect so that they can get rid of the de-stinging of the bees and the wasps, and also get rid of legs and any other hard bodies. Distribution, as I said, all the way from Uganda. You can see on the map all those purple dots, all the way down to Mozambique. So when we look at this subject and we look at their behavior, there's a few areas that you can focus on. So you need to focus yourself when you go and sit. Let's take an example. They're nesting on the ground. There's a few 3,000, 4,000 of them in the air, on the ground. Where are you going to focus, and what are you deciding you want to do? So you've got a nest site on the ground. These guys burrow into the sand, as I said. So they'll come down and sit in single or pairs. They'll sit in front of these entrances. They'll return and go and perch in front of these holes with insects in their beaks. Then you obviously have the flybys and you have fighting. So the flybys is easy enough. You go and set yourself up with the light that you want from your back, and then you just wait for them to fly by. But you have to also keep a keen eye out for any fighting that then erupts. Early in the breeding season, there's fighting for nest positions and so on. So they'll start fighting on the ground and they'll go up into the sky and they'll keep on fighting there. So you've got to keep your shutter depressed as they go up. Then in the morning, I would say about 8:30, they would start to go to the rivers. They'll go into the perches, big trees and so on around these water bodies, and they'll go and dip, and they'll return back to their nests or go on further and go and feed. You have that behavior in the morning and the afternoon. And then obviously while you sat there, you have birds of prey that come around, and there's predation of the birds and the monitor lizards. Dipping. So when they dip, you'll see them come flying by. They'll position themselves and then they'll just go head first into the water. The exit is also always spectacular, where they come out, shake their heads, get rid of most of the water, and then fly back. So if you're positioned correctly, they'll come flying towards you or at an angle past you, and you can get some really good images of this behavior. Then you've got the fighting. The fighting breaks out on the ground for various reasons. They're looking for specific nest positions, and then they'll just keep on fighting, and can be up to 3 in such a fight. Then the aerial battles, that could be very brief, or it could last a few seconds. So if you switched on and you are focused in a specific area and you see 2 birds go up, track them, and you'll see them fight, and they make for some really, really nice images. As I said previously, what we have on the ground, they'll come and sit with their prey, and they'll fly, not directly, they don't come and land directly in front of their own nest. They'll land away from the nest, and then they'll almost do these short hops towards their nest before they go in and drop the food off. And then, as I said, the predation, that's always very, very interesting. We have marsh harriers, yellow-billed kites. There are a variety of sparrowhawks and also lanner falcons that come past, and they try to trap these birds as they go in and out of these nests. The lanner falcon will still hit them when they in flight, but the other birds are too slow for that. The one on the right is a yellow-billed kite. That one just dropped down straight onto a nest, stuck its foot down, grabbed this Carmine out the nest, and then sat with him a while, and then subsequently flew off with him. What makes this tracking so difficult? Well, first of all, people don't understand, or they're not prepared. You have to be prepared. You have to be absolutely focused. If you're in a situation like that, we have so many birds, so much action going on, and you have to decide, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to try and get these guys in flight as they go up for a fight, as they fly by? So if that is what you want to do, you have to make sure camera settings are properly dialed in. Minimum shutter speed, I would say, is in excess of 4,000ths of a second. ISO, I said here, greater than 1,600, but my go-to is 3,200. I would start there. And f-stop more than f9. Why do I say f9? F9 because I want more depth of field. If the birds are fighting in the sky, you've got a lot of tail feathers and so on around, and I want to make sure that I've got enough depth of field that I catch all of that in focus. So f9 there, but I'm more on f11, f13 if the sun is up even by a little. So in terms of tracking, I always have my camera in my hand. I would press the shutter button here on mid-range, and then make sure the camera is focused there. So when something happens in that area and you lift the camera to your eye and you try and find the subject, there's already focus there. The camera doesn't have to start hunting from scratch. If a bird of prey or something approaches, start tracking it from far. Don't start shooting, just track it. And as it gets closer, you start shooting. Keep your finger on that focus button and shoot when it's close. Stop when the bird is flown past. Stop shooting, but don't stop tracking, because he might have just flown past you and then turn around and dive down onto unsuspecting prey and catch it there. Then you're already on the bird. Keep on tracking them because they have some incredible positions. They contort their bodies in and their wings in when they start to dive down. And those are the kinds of shots that you need. Now, in terms of tracking birds in flight, the key that I try and hold on to is that the smaller the subject, the higher the required shutter speed is to actually freeze the motion. I mean, you can think a seagull versus a kingfisher. You're going to need a lot more shutter speed on the kingfisher to actually freeze those wings. And the larger and closer the subject, the higher the required depth of field. You want to get the whole thing in focus. I can't remember when last I just shot at f2.8, other than if the light is extremely low and you need to get the shot. So for me, it's all about getting the whole subject in focus. So let's have a look at this. So there's 18,500 images that I kept out of the specific trip. Let's start in the middle. Let's look at the aperture. So you'll see this from f9, I circled f9 all the way to f14. So the majority of my images, of those 18,500 images, were shot there, with I would say, even more of them lying between 11 and f13, specifically for the reasons I just gave you. So if I then go and look at my ISO, I said I started about 3,200. The one trip, the light was a little bit low, so I had to start at 1,600. So you can see between 1,600 and ISO 4,000, more than 91% of those images was shot at an ISO greater than 1250. Gone are the days when you try and shoot something at ISO 100. It's totally not necessary anymore, not with the software and everything that we've got and the camera capabilities. If we have a look at shutter speed, start at 3,200 of a second, and then all the way up to 12,800 of a second, with the majority between 4 and 5,000. I try and get as high as possible, 8,000 of a second and above, but this was quite sufficient. If I can get to 4,000, I'm quite happy to do that. And you will see as the examples on the right, these guys are fighting. You need a lot of depth of field, get all those tail feathers, and to freeze the wings. Lanner falcons also extremely fast. So once you've got him tracked and dialed in, wait for him to come close and then start shooting. It's not only the Carmine bee eaters at that destination that allows you to practice and allows you to really get your bird photography to the next level. I mean, here we have fantastic examples of this knobbed duck. We shot these images of these birds, and we thought, we'd never seen these colors so vividly before, and they're absolutely beautiful. And then to go and sit with Goliath herons, waiting patiently for him to catch something. And I said, we just have to wait here because he's going to catch something and it's going to be something significant. And I was hoping for a big bream or something, but the next moment it came up with this eel. But it's fantastic. It makes for incredible photography, and it's not a portrait photograph. Then in October, we followed this beautiful finfoot. It was just in the water, it was paddling around, and then the next moment it was running. So you have to be ready, have to be confident in your camera settings, to be able to catch these photographs of these birds in doing something. We passed just shooting portraits. The pied kingfisher that we had there, it was just a question of being focused on the environment. That guy just came flying by, no warning. So you lift your camera, so your settings are right. You take, and you've got quite a few images that you can work with. Same with the little bee eater. That allowed a little bit more planning because it sits on a perch and it's going to fly. It gives you a few false starts, but then you have to have fast tracking. You have to have your depth of field correct, and then you get 1 or 2 frames. This wasn't shot with a pre-capture. It will allow you for even more spectacular images of this beautiful bird. Then the other one that caught us by surprise was the one on the right, the bottom, the rufous-bellied. Nobody expected it to take off so quickly. It is a very fast bird. Once again, it is a bird we haven't seen a lot, and we didn't really know the behavior or what to expect. So the key in all of this is to understand bird behavior. If you're patient, you will be rewarded. A few other examples, juvenile fish eagle, walk down to the water, having a drink. Everybody's shooting him, and the next moment it takes off. Are you ready for it? Yes or no? So make sure your camera is set up for success. We have the open bill storks. They make really fantastic photographs because he'll take that big muscle there and he will shake out the contents, the little animal inside, and then they'll toss it up and catch it midair. And if you set up for that, then you will get some really good images of that right in between its bill. Really big surprise for us was this osprey that appeared. We weren't expecting to see something like that. And the next moment it just dove down, and it gave us a little bit of a window because to the left of it is a bush. And one of the key frames, I would say, where its talons are down and it was barreling down towards the water, was behind the bush. But then luckily when it hit the water and it came out, it gave us an opportunity to photograph it. We have the jacanas on the left, once again, totally unexpected. One moment we're just going by with the boat, and the next moment this big fight breaks out. And the one on the left was really trying to attack and drown the one on the right. So once again, high speed action, high ISOs. This was late in the evening already, and I must confess our ISOs were probably a little bit low. Couldn't get the legs and the feet and the toes frozen. And also, occasionally you have some good portraits like the saddlebill. Another one of the birds then not to underestimate are these terns, just diving down and grabbing little fish from the surface. Another challenge are these brown martins catching insects. That one's going for an insect. As I said before, technology in the cameras that we have nowadays allows us to get these kinds of images, and we should push them. Black-winged felt there, taking off from the water, and then a fantastic session we had with these pink-backed pelicans, catching those little squeaker fish I was mentioning earlier on. And there was a whole flock of them in the water there, and they were just working from side to side. I think we had 16 species just on that scene alone. And amongst other, this little pied kingfisher that comes flying by, hovers, dives down, catches a fish, and then just departs to go and sit somewhere and pulp it. Then we were fortunate enough to also see this very, very small jacana. This jacana is half the size of the African jacana. And yeah, he also just made a very quick appearance. At the lodge itself, beautiful brown parrots, and then some of the other birds that we had there, barbets. We had the African pygmy geese the one afternoon, yellow-billed storks, and everybody's just fishing or flying. And if you're ready for that and you can get some of those images, it's really so rewarding to get shots like that. This is one of the areas that we go and sit at. This morning it was a little bit overcast, but you can see what I mean with the holes in the wall. The riverbank there, they fly out and come back, and it is really, really a spectacular place. So once again, why the Zambezi? I mean, we say you're absolutely immersed in nature photography and specifically bird photography on the trip. You do that in a few hours in the morning, few hours in the afternoon, and you get to practice and practice and practice. You are sat on your own specialist photography boat. There's nobody else that competes for a scene. The only boats we see is a fishing boat every now and then, two guys trying to catch some tigerfish. And the action is high-paced. You're ready, you fill your cards. There's a lot of action all around. So as I said, large variety of birds. We had more than 140 species on the last trip, and it is such a peaceful, peaceful place. Accommodation there that we had on the river is fantastic. The food is great. And the bird guide that we've got, he really knows his stuff. So he's able to point out birds for us and find them even long before we've even seen them. And then we have practical tips from your host, anticipating the bird behavior, calling in when the predators arrive, other birds of prey arrive. So it's really, really rewarding. Before I get to the questions, I just want to focus on two things. So when you join the mentorship program, and there are different levels of this, you can see them on our website. It is a one-on-one discussion to discuss with you and work with you in terms of the areas that you need to or want to improve on, be it your editing skills, being your actual photography, focusing, how to select images. On the editing side is how do you crop an image? What do you use? What do you have to consider? And it's really rewarding, and the people that have been on this will vouch for the value that we get in this. So as I've mentioned a few times now, the Zambezi to me has opened up a new window in terms of what we are able to shoot with our cameras. The photography is just spectacular. I don't know if the two guys are on the webinar. The one was 65,000 and the other on probably 70,000 images over a 7-day period. So you will fill your cards, and in between there, you will have some incredible shots. In the link below, there's a whole lot of videos and so on that we shot as well on these trips that you can have a look at to see if it is something that you would like to join on. There's a back-to-back option where it's not only bird photography. We'll do 4 days on the Zambezi, and then we'll go around to the Chobe, transfer there. It's about a 2-hour, 2.5-hour transfer. And then we spend 3 days on the Chobe and photograph the big stuff, you know, all the elephants and everything else that's there. It's a different environment from the one to the other, and you get so many more opportunities in terms of the mammals. Right, so from an equipment point of view, I use Sony. So I've got a Sony A1, got a 200-600mm lens and a 1.4 converter. Most of the clients that do come with me have similar setups on the Nikon, Canon, Olympus, and that will be a range up to 600 and beyond. It just makes it easier for bird photography, especially the smaller ones. And your higher end equipment is quite capable of going over 8,000ths of a second if you need it, and very, very capable of shooting at higher ISO rates than in the past. So these cameras allow, if you have your tracking set up properly, they allow you to track those small birds and those swallows without effort. But once again, I said it's a bit of practice. So you have to make sure you stay practiced and you keep on going. So we're not only on the boat, we take our photography boat along the river. It's about a 4-hour transfer. We're not on it. We've got a guy that takes it around for us. We have the boat there. So we have sessions on the boat when we will try and go from one place to the other on the river. But on the nesting grounds themselves that are on the ground, it's a short, I would say, 600-700 meter walk. And we have your little stool, or the lodge, or the driver of the boat will take some chairs along, some camping chairs, and we sit there spaced out just off the nesting grounds itself. We set ourselves up where we have the light from behind, and we stay in that firing arc if you want the good lit shots. And we stay there for a few hours in the morning, and in the afternoon we take another drive. We go all around one of the bigger islands there that separates Zambia from Namibia. And in these small channels, it is just so peaceful and so much to see and do. So f-stops on the OM1, I think it goes double what we have because it's a 4/5 sensor. So if you shoot at f8 or f8, I would say, then you are at f16, the equivalent of that, and you are going to have so much shutter speed in that. So definitely on the OM has an advantage there in terms of its shutter speed. So as I said, up to 600mm. Most of the people have zoom lenses, 180, 600, 200, 600s. They're all perfectly capable. And then if you put on a converter, if you're comfortable with the converter, because it just, you've got more focal length, but it's, for some people, it's a little bit of an adjustment to try and pick up the birds in flight if you've got too much. Otherwise, the 600mm is perfect for that, because you've got your cropping and so on afterwards, which is fine. So you can still get your images. Group size, I would say about 6 people plus the photo host is a good size and comfortable for everybody. And yes, we can spend time with everybody on an individual basis and answer specific questions. Some people want to just be left alone and they want to photograph. Others have questions, and we certainly help with that in terms of setups and settings and so on the camera. How can I prep and practice beforehand to track birds so I don't miss them when I'm there? Swallows. Swallows, and also the turtle doves in your garden. See if you can focus on them or get them when they take off and come and land at the feeding bowls. Try that. Go to a local dam, see if you can see some swallows, try and track them. It's not necessary to be prepped and ready when you get there. You're going to have so much time to do that. It's a learning curve for many people that aren't used to it, but you should be okay. We'll get you sorted very quickly. The big thing for me around bird photography and good bird photography is anticipation and knowing your subject a bit. How do you know your subject? You're going to come from another country maybe, or you're going to go to an area where you are not aware, or you don't know any of the specific birds, and there your host will have to educate you and tell you what to expect. And yes, it's going to be frustrating a little bit in the beginning, but you're going to get into it very quickly, and it's going to be incredibly rewarding when you've got those images up. And those images will probably be, anything that you can enter into a proper photography competition or in the world. Thank you for making some time to come and listen to us.